Merry Christmas!
At exactly 4:17 in the morning, when the sky above eastern Ukraine was still soaked in darkness and the front line was locked in its most fragile silence, something shifted. Not with the roar of artillery or the thunder of missiles, but with a signal. A silent digital command moved through Ukrainian command networks, passed from satellite relays to battlefield terminals, from hardened bunkers to mobile strike units, activating a plan that had been weeks in the making. In that moment, Ukraine triggered one of the most devastating battlefield traps of the entire war. Within minutes, Russian command structures began to unravel. Communications fractured, supply routes froze, entire defensive sectors went blind. And before Russian commanders could even understand what was happening, the front began to collapse in real time. But this was not a spontaneous attack. This was the final act of a carefully engineered deception campaign, designed to lure Russian forces deep into a perfectly constructed kill zone. To understand how Ukraine pulled this off, we need to go back nearly 2 weeks earlier, when the battlefield appeared deceptively quiet. For days, Ukrainian artillery batteries had gone nearly silent along this sector. Drone patrols, once constant, became sporadic. Electronic warfare signals faded. Radio traffic thinned. To Russian surveillance systems, it looked like exhaustion. Intelligence reports suggested Ukrainian brigades were rotating units, reinforcing rear positions, and preparing for a defensive posture. Satellite imagery appeared to confirm it. Trench lines showed less movement. Supply convoys slowed. Armored vehicles shifted deeper into reserve zones. To Russian planners, it looked like the perfect opportunity. For months, Moscow had struggled to regain strategic initiative. Ukrainian defenses had hardened, counteroffensives had stalled, and casualty rates remained brutal. Russian commanders were desperate for a breakthrough that could restore momentum and justify continued escalation. So when intelligence assessments pointed toward a softening Ukrainian sector, the opportunity was seized instantly. Orders were issued. Thousands of troops were repositioned under cover of darkness. Armored battalions rolled into staging areas. Heavy artillery platforms crept forward, positioning themselves for rapid bombardment. Fuel trucks, ammunition carriers, bridge-laying vehicles, and medical evacuation units followed in carefully timed convoys. The plan was straightforward. Punch through the weakened Ukrainian line, exploit the breach, and force a cascading collapse across the front. But what Russian planners did not realize was that every single one of these movements was being observed in extraordinary detail. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones were not gone. They had simply changed altitude, flight patterns, and operating windows. Western satellite intelligence was feeding near real-time imagery into Ukrainian command centers. Electronic surveillance units intercepted Russian radio chatter, mapping unit locations and identifying command hierarchies. By the time Russian assault forces were fully assembled, Ukraine had already constructed a comprehensive digital model of their attack plan. What Russia believed was Ukrainian weakness was, in reality, the most elaborate illusion of the war. Ukraine's deception strategy unfolded across multiple layers. Visible frontline activity was deliberately reduced. Defensive fortifications were camouflaged to appear abandoned. Certain minefields were carefully reconfigured, leaving narrow corridors that looked suspiciously open. Radio traffic was intentionally increased using outdated encryption protocols, allowing Russian intercept teams to decode messages suggesting fatigue, disorganization, and logistical strain. This psychological manipulation was surgical. Ukrainian planners understood Russian doctrine. They knew Moscow prized rapid exploitation of perceived weakness. By presenting a vulnerable sector, they ensured Russian forces would concentrate there. And concentrate they did. Over the following days, Russian assault groups massed behind this corridor. Reconnaissance drones scanned Ukrainian positions but detected minimal movement. Artillery units calibrated firing solutions. Tank crews ran final drills. Infantry units rehearsed breach operations. Everything pointed toward a decisive breakthrough. But beneath the surface, Ukraine had converted the entire area into a lethal grid. Every road, field, tree line, and ridge line had been digitally mapped. Pre-targeted artillery coordinates were locked into fire control systems. Drone strike routes were pre-programmed. Missile trajectories were calculated to intersect supply routes at their most vulnerable choke points. Electronic warfare units prepared jamming patterns capable of severing Russian command networks within seconds. The battlefield was no longer a landscape, it was a weapon. Then, as Russian assault units began their forward movement under cover of night, Ukraine waited. They allowed the enemy to advance, they let armored columns roll deeper, they permitted supply convoys to commit fully. The deeper Russia moved, the tighter the noose became, and at exactly 4:17 a.m., Ukraine closed the trap. The first phase was invisible. Ukrainian electronic warfare systems erupted across the electromagnetic spectrum, flooding Russian frequencies with targeted interference. Command links snapped. Drone feeds went black. Satellite navigation signals were spoofed, feeding false coordinates to advancing units. Within seconds, Russian formations lost their ability to communicate, coordinate, or even orient themselves. Confusion spread instantly. Battalion commanders attempted to re-establish contact with brigade headquarters. Calls went unanswered. Backup channels failed. Field radios crackled with static. Digital battlefield maps froze. Then came the first physical strike wave. High-precision HIMARS rockets streaked across the darkness, slamming directly into Russian artillery emplacements before a single shell could be fired. Fuel depots erupted in massive explosions, sending towering fireballs into the sky and illuminating kilometers of terrain. Ammunition storage sites detonated in secondary blasts that shook the ground like earthquakes. Bridge crossings collapsed mid-transit, severing retreat routes and isolating forward elements. Within moments, Russian forces realized they were no longer executing an offensive. They were trapped. Ukrainian drones surged from multiple directions, saturating the airspace. FPV strike drones targeted tank hatches, engine compartments, radar arrays, and communication nodes with surgical precision. Artillery fire followed in devastating waves, guided in real time by drone spotters feeding targeting data directly into automated fire control systems. The battlefield transformed into controlled chaos. Russian formations fragmented as commanders struggled to regain control. Some units were ordered to advance, others to withdraw, and still others to hold their positions. But those orders contradicted one another, creating fatal delays. Retreat routes were already under fire. Supply convoys burned where they stood. Medical evacuation vehicles were pinned down, unable to reach the wounded. In the darkness, entire battalions found themselves isolated, surrounded by overlapping kill zones. Within the first hour, Russian casualties mounted catastrophically. Dozens of armored vehicles were destroyed. Hundreds of troops were killed or wounded. Entire command posts vanished under precision strikes. Field hospitals overflowed. Evacuation helicopters could not land due to persistent drone presence. But the most devastating impact was psychological. Russian soldiers realized they had walked into a perfectly orchestrated ambush. Panic spread. Units abandoned equipment. Vehicles clogged narrow roads, becoming easy targets. Some formations broke entirely, retreating without orders, further destabilizing adjacent sectors. And that is when the collapse began to spread. As frontline commanders recognized the scale of the disaster, defensive lines in neighboring sectors began pulling back to avoid encirclement. That withdrawal triggered a domino effect. Trench networks emptied, observation posts were abandoned, artillery units displaced in haste, often leaving heavy equipment behind. Ukrainian mechanized brigades surged forward, exploiting the chaos. Instead of cautious advances, they launched rapid penetration attacks, seizing critical road junctions, cutting supply arteries, and isolating retreating units. Entire Russian battalions were encircled, forced to surrender or attempt desperate breakouts. Frontline maps had to be redrawn in real time. Russian command centers struggled to comprehend the scale of the collapse. Reinforcements were rushed forward, only to encounter destroyed bridges, cratered roads, and relentless drone surveillance. By midday, Russian forces had lost control of multiple defensive sectors. Strategic depth evaporated. Weeks of preparation disintegrated in hours. This was not merely a tactical defeat. It was a strategic disaster. Because Ukraine had demonstrated something profoundly unsettling. They had mastered the fusion of intelligence, deception, electronic warfare, and precision strike operations into a single synchronized battlefield weapon. This operation revealed a new level of Ukrainian operational sophistication. Every phase had been coordinated with near-perfect timing. Intelligence gathered from satellites, drones, cyber interception, and battlefield reconnaissance converged into a unified command architecture. Artificial intelligence systems assisted in target prioritization. Automated fire control networks compressed decision-making cycles to seconds. The result was a battlefield tempo Russia simply could not match. For months, analysts had questioned whether Ukraine retained the capacity for large-scale operational planning. This single operation answered that question decisively. Ukraine did not merely defend, they hunted, and they executed with chilling efficiency. The psychological impact on Russian command cannot be overstated. Every quiet Ukrainian sector now represents potential catastrophe. Every apparent withdrawal could conceal a trap. Every lull in activity raises alarm. This uncertainty paralyzes decision-making. Commanders hesitate, orders are delayed, operational tempo slows. In modern warfare, hesitation is fatal. Meanwhile, Ukraine gained something even more powerful than territory. They seized momentum. Morale surged across Ukrainian ranks. Soldiers witnessed firsthand the effectiveness of their planning and technology. Confidence returned. Faith in command leadership strengthened. This psychological advantage will shape engagements for months to come. Strategically, the implications are vast. Russia now faces compounding challenges. Manpower shortages continue to worsen. Equipment quality degrades as modern armor is replaced with decades-old stock. Training standards fall as mobilization accelerates. Logistics networks strain under constant pressure. Command inefficiencies persist. Ukraine, in contrast, continues refining battlefield automation, drone warfare, AI-assisted targeting, and networked operations. Each engagement becomes a learning laboratory. Each operation sharpens their edge. The gap widens. And in warfare, widening gaps become chasms. This battle does not end the war, but it marks a transition. A shift from industrial-scale attrition warfare toward precision-driven, intelligence-dominated conflict. It signals that brute force alone no longer guarantees success. Victory now belongs to those who integrate information, deception, and technology faster than their enemy can adapt. And Ukraine is adapting faster. As smoke cleared over the shattered front, the implications echoed far beyond the battlefield. Military analysts across the world began reassessing modern war doctrine. Command academies studied the operation. Intelligence agencies dissected every phase. Because what happened at 4:17 a.m. was not just a Ukrainian victory, it was a glimpse into the future of warfare, a future where battlefields are shaped not only by firepower, but by algorithms, where deception becomes a strategic weapon, where digital dominance decides physical outcomes. In that future, the side that thinks faster wins. And on that morning, Ukraine thought faster than anyone else. At 4:17 a.m., Ukraine did not merely spring a trap, they redefined the battlefield. They demonstrated that the age of brute force is fading, replaced by precision, intelligence, and calculated deception. As Russian forces reeled and defensive lines collapsed, one truth became impossible to ignore. This war had entered a new phase, and in that phase, Ukraine had just made its boldest, smartest move yet.